Hello and welcome to the Busy Bays podcast, where we provide valuable insight and advice on the marketing and other business type questions that auto repair shops encounter as they work towards achieving their goals. Now here's our hosts, Martin Morgan and Bekah Hackley.
This is the Busy Bays podcast, a podcast that's all about being the ultimate marketing and business resource for auto repair shop owners. Today, we will be covering how the pandemic has changed the way people shop.
Yes, Bekah, we want to talk about consumer shopping patterns. And I think first, as we talk about something as terrible as the pandemic, we certainly want to say that it's just been not a great time, certainly, and condolences and thoughts and prayers go out to anybody who's been affected significantly, certainly by the pandemic. But as we look at it today, we are considering how shopping patterns specifically have changed and how that affects auto repair shops. And it is significant. Shopping patterns have definitely changed. Obviously, early on, when coronavirus was spreading in the March-April time period and lockdowns were put in place, people really didn't leave their house unless it was very specifically, maybe not emergency, but certainly things where it was absolutely necessary. And obviously that affected a significant number of repair shops just as far as the type of business that they were doing. And it wasn't widespread across the country necessarily, but in most cases, it had some effect on almost every single shop out there. And certainly when you think about, okay, so what are people doing differently than what they did before the pandemic? And the way they're shopping is definitely changed. And part of that is because people just aren't out as much, whether that's because they've been told not to or by choice. They're just not driving as much, and certainly saw that in the number of miles driven and how that affected the need for auto repair. But when you think about just the way that they're shopping, so they're not just going out and exploring a little bit from a shopping standpoint. They're not browsing as much. And a lot of people are also working from home. So again, they're not driving as much. And to some extent, location was one of the best advertising campaigns for a bunch of shops, because people would drive by your shop and they would see it and think, oh yeah, well, I need something. I drive by this shop. Yeah, exactly. I drive by this shop every day. This seems like a great place to go. And with work from home, that is just not happening as much. And when people not getting out as much, it's not happening as much. So certainly there's that impact. And then just looking forward and thinking about that, Google just came out with a study where 77% of United States shoppers say that they will browse for gift ideas for the holidays online only and not in stores. So certainly in the past, 77%. And when you think about that in the past, certainly people have browsed online a little bit, but it's in addition most often to being in stores. These are people, 77% of U.S. shoppers said they will browse for the gift ideas online and will not go into stores to do so.
Wow. When people browse online versus just going out and about, I mean, we all know when you're out and about, you find things, or even more, bringing it more back to the auto repair side of things, like you're out, you see it jogs your memory of you need to get an oil change, your transmission needs to be checked, your brake pads need to be fixed. But with the online focus, I mean, when you need to get something done, it's a lot more specific now. Like people are going to know what they want, they're going to search for it, and it's going to be a lot more direct and to the point. And can you agree with that, Martin?
That's absolutely correct, Bekah, because people have just gotten used to shopping online, they've been shopping online, but now they're shopping for almost everything online. So they're going to do the same when it comes to auto repair needs as they do when they're looking for groceries or something perhaps from a restaurant. So it becomes all the more important that shops have a strong online presence. And certainly from a website standpoint. So they're used to it. They're doing it more often. They're utilizing online searches in order to find almost everything that they're looking for from a shopping standpoint. And the other ramification of people not going out as much or having things in place where there are not events, people aren't seeing each other as much, is that now the ability to impact word of mouth in person has significantly dropped off over the last 9 to 10 months. So lots of times we'll hear from shops who say, oh, I don't really need a website because I just get all my business from word of mouth. And that's awesome when it happens. The opportunity for word of mouth to happen now is greatly diminished because people just aren't out as much. They're not bumping into each other. They're not talking as much as they otherwise would, because in many cases, and nothing is absolute, so I don't want to present it in that way. And in some areas, it might be more likely that people are getting out. But those opportunities to talk to others in person are greatly diminished. So that certainly impacts it from a word of mouth standpoint, which then, again, as we've said, pulls more people into online search. And so many more of these things are happening online even more than they previously were, which makes your online presence all the more important. And if you don't have a presence online, even more than, again, like 10 months ago, you are going to put yourself at a significant disadvantage against other shops in your area.
And being online, I mean, that kind of raises the question of if people aren't bumping into one another, they're not talking about like everyday living, kind of when you bump into each other at the grocery store, you have to ask yourself, what is your shop doing that's going to raise awareness of, just even services. I mean, I'll be honest, I've been working from home since the end of March, and I haven't driven a whole lot, and I will get several coupons like in the mail of like, hey, Bekah, it's time for your oil change, and it's kind of like, oh, geez, yeah, I probably should take it in for an oil change, even though I haven't been driving it. But those are things that if we're not out and about doing regularly, we will forget as people, I think, or at least most people driving probably. So I think as a shop owner, you need to think to yourself, what can I be doing to raise awareness of my shop? If that means coupons, like mailings type of thing, or if you have a texting service, it's a great idea to kind of shoot out those mass texts to your customers like, hey, Cindy, it's been a while, looking forward to the holidays, those type of things. If you can do that within a text service, or also on your Facebook, that's another great opportunity where people can just kind of bump themselves back up into the people's eyes, if that makes sense.
Right. And you've got to think about every other way that you can reach your customers or potential customers. And then if that funnel, let's say, or pipeline of word of mouth referrals that typically come into your shop are no longer coming in because the opportunity doesn't exist, what are those things that you're going to do to make sure that your shop is in front of potential customers? And it just magnifies the importance of certainly every part of your online presence. So your website, of course. You mentioned Facebook, Bekah, which is big. You mentioned texting isn't really online presence, but it's a way for you to reach out to your customers. You also think about Google My Business and how important that is. We've talked about it. I think we hit on almost every single one of the podcasts. But with Google My Business, and especially when you think about local search, and if somebody is using their phone or a desktop, laptop, whatever it might be, and they're searching for auto repair, and they're likely to want to go to something close to them, and Google My Business often drives a significant portion of the results that they're going to see, in addition to organic search below that on that search engine results page. Then you want to make sure that you're taking care of all of those accounts and giving yourself the opportunity to earn and have good reviews posted as well. So you've got to make sure that you are in the places online where people are going to be looking in a way that is just so natural even more so to them now than it was 10 months ago.
And I think people can agree with this on all levels. Technology can absolutely be our enemy, but it can also kind of be our best friend. So hitting on, you said the local search being a huge thing with people going on their desktop or going on their mobile phone. I mean, those are, correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, but those are two of the same searches. You're both searching for, on each device, desktop or mobile, you're searching for auto repair in, Raleigh, North Carolina type of thing. But how things are perceived or how they look online are different. So are you set up to be successful mobile and on your desktop? And if you could, Martin, like you can maybe explain what I mean by that in terms of your website or your GMB, like what are things, what's going to pop up first, like versus desktop or the mobile?
And you are right, Becca. Those searches will look a little bit different. For the most part, the results are going to be similar, or the way they come up are going to be similar.
Where they populate.
But when you see that, and they might change in order of importance. So what might happen is that, let's say, if somebody's searching mobily, in most cases, Google, of course, can tell what somebody's using. They're going to be more likely to present the map and local pack probably higher up in the results on mobile than they might on a desktop, where they think that somebody may not be as urgently looking for a shop. They might think, okay, if somebody's looking now, they're on a mobile device, I can tell they may need immediate service and they're looking for something that's super close, and that's really important. But if somebody's on a desktop, Google might read that as, the level of urgency is a little bit less than somebody on a mobile phone. So they may show the results a little bit differently. And of course, regardless of whether it's mobile or desktop, that piece of, how close is it to them and how likely are they to go there is critically important. So you've got to make sure that your website is certainly optimized for local search, and also that you've optimized really your Google My Business profile to ensure that you show up high in those local pack rankings to the extent that you can, with the idea that direct location does play a big part in that.
And now that consumers are relying for much of their resources to be found online, it's a big thing about what's online for your shop. I mean, we talked about your Google My Business profile, your website, possibly, hopefully having a Facebook, but alongside all of those, there could be reviews in your website, GMB, and on your Facebook. So reviews are going to be kind of your pot of gold, is what I always view them as. I mean, it's social proof, right? If I'm able to read and
absolutely.
See, like if I can actually experience, live vicariously almost through the experience of the shop's customers, this will bring out a lot more trust in what your potential customers will have in your shop. It will boost your reputation altogether, and it will be the more likely reason for your customers to give you a call, because if they read the reviews and they like what they see, why wouldn't they call you?
Absolutely. And when you think about that too, that is the digital word of mouth. Reviews, things like, somebody specifically going out of their way to mention a good experience that they had at your shop. So when you think about that, make sure that you're asking for reviews to the extent that you can. Make sure that Facebook profile is updated. Make sure you've got new photos, that you've got new information about your shop and how you are providing services, and ask people when you've done business with them to like your Facebook page, so you have the opportunity to show up in their newsfeed. Similarly, ask people that are really happy with your service for reviews. So if that in-person word of mouth is not happening as much as it previously had, again, you've got to fill that with something else in order to attract business. And if you can put that time and effort into digital word of mouth, then you're going to greatly increase your chances of continuing to be successful. And I mentioned updating those things to the extent that you can. You want to make sure your website is updated. You want to make sure your Google My Business profile is updated. You want to make sure your Facebook page is updated. And photos are good, but also in the times we're in, if people go somewhere and they don't see anything related to COVID and perhaps hours, and especially if you've made any changes to your hours or your service or anything, you want to make sure that that's communicated well through all of those different platforms to your customers and potential customers.
I was just going to kind of backpack on that a little bit. When you say kind of update the website, update your profiles, and especially in the COVID time that we're in, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people at this point are, they're wearing masks when they go in, they're washing their hands, or it's contactless service or some type of curbside service. But like, if there's something specific that your shop is doing, share that. I mean, let the customers know kind of what to expect, because one, that makes them all the more comfortable in, okay, do they wear a mask? Do I get out of my car? Do I stay in my car? I mean, I've even heard of shops now, which I'm sure this is slim, I have no idea, but my father-in-law actually went into a shop. He stayed in the car the whole time that they did the oil change on his car. He never had to get out, never rolled down his window, nothing. So I know that will vary in location and wherever they are, but it's just something that if you do something a little bit differently due to COVID, make sure that you're updating your customers on that as well.
That is exactly correct. And you want to set expectations for people on what is going to happen, but also that can be a nice differentiator or a competitive advantage for you. You use the example of your father-in-law, which is a good one. I'll use the example of myself. I knew that I needed new tires on my car, and instead of taking it to the dealership to get them, looked around locally, and there was a shop within less than 2 miles from my house. They were willing to come and pick up my car, take it to the shop, put the tires on, and drop it off. And to me, that convenience, it was just awesome. Like it was great.
Did you have to pay extra? I have to ask.
No, I didn't have. I didn't have to pay extra at all. It was just a part of their service. And I know there are a fair number of shops that are doing that. And if you're doing that, the convenience, the no touch, all of those things for your customers is huge. So you want to make sure that you're letting people know that you're offering that type of service, because for me, I think about, oh man, all right, so got to get stuff together. I either have to plan to be out of the office, but working from home, away from home for a couple hours, whatever it might be, whatever the time is, or do it at a time when my wife could pick me up and bring me home, and then we'd have to go back. But this just made it so easy. And any of those things that you're doing to make it easier on your customers, you want to make sure that you're communicating those in the most important online places like your website, Facebook, Google My Business profile.
Yeah, talk about a differentiator. I mean, that's sweet. That's really convenient. I get not all shops can do that, but hey, if you're doing something different, promote that. Keeping up to date just with times, what's going on within your community and within your state, like just with all different type of mandates or new things happening, that's going to affect people all together in your local area. I mean, that's something always to watch out for, of course, but along with sharing things, always share those updates on your profiles like we had mentioned, and just trying to stay active as you possibly can online, because that's going to be where people are searching and looking. So if that means communicate with website providers on any like updates on hours, services, kind of like Martin mentioned, that's going to be huge, because that is how people are going to know what's going on if they're not just casually driving around anymore, really.
It is really important. And remember, in a vacuum, people just fill in information without really knowing it. So if they see, let's just say you have a website and it looks like it hasn't been touched since the beginning of the year. There's no information about different services or hours or anything related to COVID or anything like that. Probably a decent number of people are just going to think that you're just not in business anymore because there's nothing on there. This is such a consequential thing to us, and staying and keeping people updated and communicating to them is really important. And I wish it wasn't true, but it as numbers continue to creep up, and it just keeps looking worse in almost every area of the country right now, chances are good that whether there's additional lockdowns again or anything like that, it's probably likely that people will go back to doing less and they're going to be out less. And with all of that, it again just drives home the importance that you've got to make sure you're connecting or able to be found on these online, or else you're going to be at a significant disadvantage.
And it's important to just ask yourself those big questions. And some of them may seem obvious, but the amount of times that I've seen websites where it takes me longer to find the phone number than it does to look up what kind of services they offer. I mean, that's a problem. If I can't find the phone number, the address, or maybe like an appointment button right on the website, right on the main front page, I'm sorry, but I'm going to the next one because I need something, and I promise I'm not like I need this and I need it now. But when you're looking for a service, I think we all have the expectation now of that a website is going to have those things front and center. And if they don't, it's kind of like, geez Louise, this is more of a pain to look it up. So you have to remember go ahead.
Yeah, you've got to make it as easy as possible. It's exactly right. You just think of, especially now, just ordering food so often. Not so often, not like we order food every single day, or maybe once a week or so. But now that it's much more commonplace, at least for me, there's probably lots of people who did it a lot before. But restaurants, whether they be fast food or real nice restaurants, have spent a lot more time and focus on making that system as easy as possible. Through the web and I just think of, different experiences, right? So you go on there and you're like, okay, we'll pick this up tonight for dinner or something. And you have an experience where it's super easy and you're like, wow, that was so easy. And then you go through and you use one and it's really difficult and they haven't put enough time into the online ordering system. Next time you're thinking about where you're going to order from, there's probably a good chance you're just going to go to the one that was super easy just because it was just like a seamless system. They just made it really easy for you. And we're getting more and more used to that as consumers. And now that's like the expectation. We're much less willing to deal with clunky user interfaces and bad ordering systems than we were probably 10 months ago.
Yeah. Honestly, your customer experience, your customer service, that's going to be your competitive advantage at this point. I mean, like you said, the easier, lack of effort type of service that you can provide, that's going to be the one that the customers go back to. I mean, they're not going to go out of their way to make their day harder when things are already hard enough as it is. Geez, working from home with either kids here, your spouse here 24/7, jobs, there's so much stress right now that are just taking up so much of people's lives that if you can have that customer service, customer experience, that's going to make it easy on people. Hey, all the power to you.
Right. And it's difficult too, because we understand all of you as you listen to this. You probably, you might be thinking, well, I've got all those issues and challenges too. And it's not fun and it is hard. But when you think about what are those things that can really propel my shop above all the others locally, and if there are things that you can do to make it easier for people to do business with you. Every time you take down an obstacle, you greatly increase the chances of not only winning the customer at the beginning, but also keeping them coming back to you.
Yeah, and even in this time, I know that there are shops who are struggling to get customers in, or there are some shops that are seemingly doing quite well from what we've heard from our team that talks to a lot of repair shops throughout the day. But you always want to play it one step forward. So whether you're doing well or you're not doing well, you want to be prepared and always have a plan, especially now. I mean, my gosh, we don't really know what to expect even in the next coming weeks or months, as either the calls slow down or things start to pick up during this holiday season. I mean, always want to be one step ahead for your calendar to be filled.
One of the mistakes that can be made in really any business, it's not auto repair shops specifically, is that during good times, you may often feel like, hey, things are going well now, I don't really need to do that because I don't have to worry about it. And that is the mistake there, is that, during those good times is when you've got to prepare and put yourself in position to minimize what might be a valley, right? So if things are going well, now is the time to really put yourself in position to still be doing well if or as things, fall slightly. So, take advantage of the positive things if you are in that position to invest or spend the time, whether it's time or money, spend the time really building out these other pieces for your business.
And not only like pieces of your business as in how to handle contactless service, that type of stuff, but even with your employees. Your employees have families too, of course, and you kind of have to think about them too. So being one step ahead and how your business is going to perform in the next coming months, that's going to help your entire team. And the more focus that you can have on each other and supporting the business and one another, keeping that communication line open and transparent, that will help you altogether too, even in like this uncertain time. As long as your team can be on the same page, that will help you get a lot further too.
These types of times are the time where you really need to come together as a team, and people are always going to remember that, and that's going to really stick with them. And at a time where finding and keeping really good techs is difficult, it's important to make sure that sort of camaraderie exists.
Yeah, so for your customers, I mean, making that just the business side of things accessible with easy things to find online on your website, make sure all of that is updated, as well as having reviews, respond to the reviews that come in. It's going to make it a lot easier for your customers to be able to contact you. And then, especially now with the pandemic, I mean, people appreciate more than ever just a stress-free interaction. So always keep that in mind when you're talking with staff too.
Same sort of thing. Make it as easy as possible, whatever it might be. If you can break down barriers or obstacles, like you said, Bekah, whether it's for your customers or for your team, it's going to be much appreciated and increase it's going to increase loyalty. And maybe that means loyalty from customers, and maybe more importantly, it means loyalty from your people.
And, obviously we work at a company that helps repair shops with their online presence, helps with their marketing and their business. We want to give advice. We want to help as much as we possibly can, as well as make things easier on you. But not only on you, we want to take care of your customers too. And by that, we help providing a service to shop owners that gives the accessibility, the stress-free interaction of having that website, of finding the appointment request button, of having your hours listed right there. We want to take those stress of the online marketing side of things and just completely take it off your plate, just so you can keep the engine of people's cars running smoothly. You know what I mean? So that's something we really do take pride in here. And if you have questions or you need advice, especially during this time, I mean, this is what we're here for. We like to provide a lot of valuable content where you can read about, I mean, technicians, we can read about things going on in the pandemic and other helpful advice of online marketing within your Facebook. So if you ever have questions, please check us out, not even for a website, but just for maybe some tips too.
Yeah, and when you think about takeaways from what we've discussed today, key pieces to think about, people are relying more and more on the internet to find not only products, but local services. I know you've probably been hearing that for some time, but over the past 10 months, that has ratcheted up significantly. People aren't out there as much driving around or seeing your shop, which only increases the importance of emphasizing your online presence. And similarly, word of mouth isn't happening as much either. And so you've got to rely a little bit more on the digital word of mouth, which are things like Facebook and your online reviews. And then, we spent a fair amount of time toward the end here talking about the importance of just making it easy for your customers. The consumers now, make it easy for me. I'm juggling 10 different things. I've got kids at school that aren't at school. They're in my house trying to learn online, and it's impossible. I'm not sure about my job and what's happening with that. I'm trying to work from home. All of these things. When you make that easy, you make it easy to do business with you. You're going to attract people, and you're going to keep them coming back, and you're going to get them talking about how easy you are to do business with. So, as Bekah said, we're here to help. Anything that we can do, please use our resources. And also, subscribe to the podcast. Maybe this is your first time listening. Maybe it's not your first time, but we are everywhere that you can get your podcast, and we encourage you to subscribe and don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can be of help.
Thank you for listening to the Busy Bays podcast. If you want more information about this, please visit myrsw.com and go to our resource center. We plan on hosting a podcast each month, so subscribe so you don't miss out. Also, just have one last favor to ask of you. It would mean a lot to us if you would share this with your friends or another shop. Our goal is to help auto repair shops succeed, so you can help us achieve this goal by just telling someone else about the show. Thanks again. Have a great day.